Welcome back to Off Key. This is part 3 of our interview with Brian the Snowman Powers. My name is Allie Branjord. I'm here with my co-host, Shannon Brunet. Today we're talking about jazz and New Orleans. Our spotlighted artist today is Brad Lash from Chicago. Stick around to hear his new jam, 1871.
Had a dream about Dick and Johnny who left their...
All right.
Hit a falsetto real quick. Just do it. Do it better.
Do it better?
Producer, there you go.
Do it better. If I had a producer...
Come on. That was it. Come on. Do it one more time. Do it.
Ready?
Yep. Yeah, we're ready.
Ooh, 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 ooh. Thank you.
And then we're going to melodine that and show you what it should sound like.
Yeah, pick a key.
There you go.
Oh, I want to ask this question. This is all me right here. For you viewers at home who don't know Snowman, he reigns from Louisiana. So can you tell us a little bit about your...
I'm sorry, Ellie, did you just say viewers?
Yeah.
This is a radio talk show.
And they're viewing it.
Well, they're actually looking at the computer while
Yeah,
they're
you
listening,
look at the
right?
computer.
No, actually, I've been told most people are not.
Oh.
Well, you call that viewers. On the radio, they call it viewers. I'm pretty sure.
Listeners.
Listen, whatever. Okay. God. It's not that important.
Would you like my shawl too?
No. You should hand me another beer while you're sitting there criticizing my words. God. So could you tell us a little bit about being from Louisiana and the music there and just about it?
It's huge, like cover music and tourism. And although there are so many great traditions of, blues and jazz and funk and Caribbean and, soca and all this kind of stuff that come from there. In fact, one of the first, American music art forms, which is with jazz, came, out of New Orleans and that kind of thing. And so, it's interesting that nowadays, though, it's all cover bands. Like anywhere else in the state you go, it's a bunch of top 40, a bunch of country, a bunch of that kind of thing. You know what I mean? And even in New Orleans, it's a bunch of tourist gigs. Everybody's doing either brass bands or old school jazz. But then what's cool is all those musicians who are great, they go into the clubs at night, and any of these clubs you go to, you can go in at like 11, 12 at night when the guys get off their cover band gigs or whatever, and they're throwing down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They're actually playing what they want to play.
Right. And the music there is very different than here, man. I know I kind of wanted to mention this, but, I know Minneapolis really prides itself in their funk music, with Prince and all this kind of stuff, and even the little Larry Graham School and all that stuff. And New Orleans is... Man, funk music down there is every bit as huge, but it's so different, whereas kind of northern, Minneapolis funk is so clean and very precise. Everyone is super in their spot, and everybody just stays in their own little spot. Where in Louisiana, it's very greasy. You might have the drummer pushing and pulling on the bass player a little bit, but the pockets are just huge, and it feels almost more relaxed to me, a little bit more greasy, you know what I mean? And not that either one is bad or worse than the other. They're just very, very different, but they're both funk.
I think to put that in terms that the non-musician might kind of listen to, there's progressive rock and then there's like grunge rock. And I know this is kind of a little bit off base, but progressive is very tight, very well put, like very clean put together. You think Rush. And then you think that compared to Pearl Jam, which is very kind of loosely played and not as clean, and is that what you kind of mean as in like, here's we're going to play this at this time, and there it's like, we're just going to kind of go with the flow. Kind
of, except when you have like some of those alt bands, they actually just don't know any better in some degree, or they don't really realize their guitar is out of tune. In Louisiana, it's more like you still have the same quality of players as far as ability, that kind of thing. You might have some guys who can't afford good gear, so you still get some of that. And you get some of the guys who are heavy drinkers, and they, I'm not sure what world they're in.
Musicians, heavy drinkers, I don't know what you're talking about.
Absolutely. But it's you still have cats with really good chops, really good ability. It's just a different style. I remember, for example, I lived in New York for about 9 years and saw many concerts at the Blue Note, which is a kind of a famous jazz club. And the whole thing, man, when you're in New York and you're a crowd of people, or you're playing in front of a crowd of people, everyone is really uptight. They're all watching the musicians, waiting for them to mess up so that they can turn to their friend and say, I know he messed up. It should have been this. It's that kind of crowd, right?
Yeah.
Well, Dr. John, who is a famous, Louisiana piano player and guitar session player, he goes into the Blue Note playing, his New Orleans stuff. And within 2 or 3 songs, people were dancing in the aisles. And these people don't dance.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And he tore that place down. And it was so interesting to see a crowd like that. And Dr. John's music, although he is an accomplished piano player, obviously, lots of chops. The band was great. They were playing loose. There'd be some wrong notes here and there. There'd be, because it was just feel good. We're going for it, risky kind of music. And they just ate it up because they're so used to hearing the tightly polished, precise, and I'm not knocking it, but I think it can be kind of emotionalist sometimes.
So the next question that we want to ask is, the Billboard mag got rid of the jazz chart recently. I did hear about this. This is that was a year ago, I think, pretty recently. So do you think anyone really noticed, and do you think it's dead?
What's really interesting about that is I didn't even know about it until not too long ago.
It's funny. There was a article that I read about it about a year ago, and it was literally probably 3 paragraphs long in the bottom left-hand corner of a page where no one would see it. And they said Billboard magazine gets rid of the jazz charts. And just basically the article said it because no one cared.
You know what I say to that is that iTunes still has a jazz category, and they're still getting millions of hits.
Yeah, because you can't buy it anywhere else.
Right.
It's nice.
Well, and you can't... Well, you can buy jazz still everywhere, but, you can't follow a chart for it now on Billboard, so to speak, or whatever, right? However, now, so I just went and saw Dave Koz actually in concert not too long ago, and they were talking about the success they're having of being atop the iTunes charts, so to speak. Because iTunes they have a top 10 of albums. And,
sure.
And so that's what they were focusing on and talking about, because they've been number 1, I think, for most of the summer. And, Billboard, I love Billboard. I love, all that stuff. I used to be involved with the, I've been charted on the Billboard Talent Net a couple of times with the band I was in, back when they used to have a ton of charts. And they had a chart for internet artists and new artists, and we actually made that one. But, what's interesting is that what chart really matters the most? The Billboard chart, which is driven by more corporate stuff. Now, iTunes is corporate as well, don't get me wrong. But at least in iTunes, the albums that chart there are ones that are also selling the most, right? That's how they chart.
Yep.
So in a way, being atop that chart, I'd almost rather be there and just forget Billboard, because at least if I'm on the top of the iTunes thing, I'm also selling a bunch of stuff.
Do you think the New Orleans jazz thing, is it possible, because you're from there, the Louisiana part, is it also the fact that we're in Minnesota that jazz kind of suffers geographically because it's so far away from a lot of different things when it's not mainstream? That is the closer you get to New Orleans, the more jazz you hear?
No, not at all. In fact, actually, most of the stuff you hear in New Orleans is because of the tourism trade, and that kind of stuff is a bunch of old stuff.
Sure.
It's actually very cover-oriented, just like everything else there. Let's look at it this way. Okay. You have your pocket of friends that you hang out with, right? And you have the music that you like to listen to. Therefore, you have those pocket of bands in town that you know of and that you go see and that kind of thing, right? We all kind of have our little circles, right? I think that what's interesting, Minneapolis has a huge jazz scene here compared to a lot of other places. But if you're not into that scene, you would never know, because the pockets of styles in any one metropolitan area are actually very isolated from each other. For example, when I was in New York, I was in the city playing, again, huge jazz scene there, huge Cuban big band scene there in New York, which actually doesn't exist for many other places. But in New Jersey, all singer-songwriters, and a ton of them. You would never know unless you were there, and unless you were into that kind of music, because there's also a lot of progressive and other things like that. So it's interesting. It's hard to say that any one area has more than another when it's more about the pockets of music that we each individually travel in, and that's what we see. And so it might look like jazz isn't as big, but to those who are in that crowd, it's huge. There's a ton of underground jazz here. You had Happy Apple spring out of that with Dave King and those guys, and Dave King just won, Downbeat Magazine just nominated his latest record as the #1 album in the country.
Nice.
And he's from here, and he uses all Midwest guys. And like, you've got the Happy Gnome, and you've got a bunch of clubs here. What is that place? Is it Bryant Lake? Is it Bryant Lake Bowl?
This is Bryant Lake Bowl, but I'm not sure they have jazz there.
They do, absolutely. And there's a ton of clubs here for it. But again, it's kind of underground, just like some of the other things here. Just like, in this area, you've got a ton of African music, and you have a ton of Hmong music here, and it's kind of interesting that way. So I would say that not really any closer to New Orleans. In fact, I would actually say in some instances it's kind of further away. But in the major city areas around the country, you'll see a lot more straight ahead jazz and that kind of thing flourishing still, even though it's a little underground.
Next episode, we have another chat with Brian the Snowman Powers about the history of jazz. But right now, take a listen to Brad Lash's new song, 1871, off of his EP. The EP is also named 1871, which is currently available on iTunes and Spotify.
Had a dream about Dick and Johnny who left their kids with the keys to the city. They burned and looted and broke the airport and sold the good stuff off to Indiana. They played. Well, who let them in here? Start from scratch, learn from mistakes of the past, burn it down. That's how we'll clean up this town. Piles of ash give birth to lush greener grass. We'll get it done like Chicago in '71. Called some friends to come out and party and turned our city into a monarchy. They cut some budgets and raised some taxes and skated off with the $500 million. It's gone. And that was just last year. Start from scratch, learn from mistakes of the past, burn it down. That's how we'll clean up this town. Piles of ash give birth to lush greener grass. We'll get it done like Chicago in '71. Won't be faced if they put the boot on my car, and in this state a good liar should get me far. So if anyone asks you don't know me, let's grab a hot dog and get the only reason watch it all burn down. There's no way that this plan can backfire. You'll get burned if you mess with the people. And if the new guy comes to get me, I'll already have moved to Wisconsin, I hear. They've got lots